Welcome everybody to the Board Budget Subcommittee. We typically start with any open comments from the public or community, and I would ask Rais or Robbie if you've received anything.
I did not.
I did not too.
Okay. And
Okay.
all right, so why don't we go ahead and get started? There's nothing on the agenda tonight about budget.
End of meeting.
Yeah, right.
I have heard from somebody from the community that we have been live, so.
Oh.
And maybe what we will do is Jim Morris will be joining us. So, but I think maybe we can start from the beginning of the agenda and see if there are things we can get answered. Oh, there he is. Hello, Dr. Morris. Good to see you.
Can you hear us okay?
Hi, thank you so much. Sorry, Patty just sent me the invitation.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Morris.
You're so welcome.
And want to make sure that you know everybody. Have you met Zion yet, our student board member?
No, only through his family. I probably have met him, but not had a one-on-one conversation because he comes from a famous family.
That's right.
Yeah.
Zion,
Hello, Dr. Morris.
introduce
Hi.
yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Zion. I go to Irvington. I'm going to be a junior, and yeah, I'll be serving as student board member. Really excited.
That's awesome. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We
Absolutely.
keep getting really great student board members.
And Mr. Battle, I've only previously met through watching board meetings. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, and I haven't met. Is it Dr. Morris or
Yeah,
Yes.
Jim. But yes.
Jim?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Jim. So I'm Marcus Battle. So I've been here now since August, as you've known if you've been watching the board meetings. So
I apologize, Marcus. I guess the reason Jim was here last week was because you weren't. So you wouldn't have crossed paths. Sorry about that.
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Well, Jim, as you may remember from a few years ago, what we typically do is just go through the agenda, and if there are any questions, then we ask them and try to get clarification. And just before you came on the call, we found out that there are no comments from the community.
So the first thing I have is on item 10.1 and 10.2. Do you have anything? I don't know that there is anything prior to that, but.
No, please go ahead.
So I guess my question about these, both of them are agreements for consultant services.
Yep.
And they are only for Mission San Jose High School. And I'm not sure that they're showing a budget line item. It says it's budgeted, but it doesn't say from where it's budgeted.
Mission San Jose ASB is the funding source.
Okay, for both of them.
That's correct.
And
they're,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. And so they're both written as full year contracts, but they won't actually, it's highly likely that they won't be used for the full year simply because, during distance learning, for example, there is probably less opportunity or less need to use the consultant, but they're written for an up to maximum amount. The other important thing about those two items is they were advertised to all of the teachers at Mission San Jose to see if any internal staff were interested. And Ms. Strasbaugh has recently initiated a process where other teachers, not just from Mission San Jose, who may be interested in extra duty assignments, can sign up and receive an email notification. So Ms. Burbeck Herrera was very happy about that. That's in place now. But unfortunately, there were no internal staff interested in the assignment.
Well, I appreciate that we're going that extra mile because I think it is important that we do that. Do we know if other schools have similar need and how they're managing?
I don't want to, no, I don't know directly the answer to that question. I think I know we have similar contracts are in place at Hopkins. But my guess, my educated guess would be simply because of the complexity and the size of the program admission, it's probably more needed there. I would be surprised if we won't see similar contracts come forward for American because they have a pretty significant band program also. I don't know the answer to your question, Ms. Crosby.
Okay. And so is the expectation then is if we do go back to the need for the program or the ability to hold it, that it would be a prorated contract?
That's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
And my next item would be 11.2, unless you have something prior to that.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so 11.2 is the Prop 39 money. And I see that we're having 137,000 possibly left. I have two questions. One is in the agenda item, it states that any amendments may lead to increases or decreases in final contract amounts, but we're going ahead with the notice of completion. So my concern is if it really hasn't closed out, how can we do the closeout? And if there are increases that happen to be above and beyond 137,000 and we've already closed it out, is that problematic? And then I guess the third question might be, do we have to send this money back somewhere since it was in the form of a grant?
So I'd like to answer that. So we are actually not sending any money back. We are actually expanding scope. So originally there were several workstations in areas that did not receive upgraded lighting. So with the balance that is left to finish, we are now taking those dollars and actually completing that scope of work. And as far as the original application that identified the scope of work that was with the original application, all of that work has been completed and has been signed off and inspected, and we are filing our notice of completion to close that out. The remaining dollars that you see are now going to be utilized under a separate agreement. We've bid that work out and are in the process now of actually executing those contracts and getting that work done. So we will be finished by, I believe it's August 15th is our drop dead date for us to file all of our completion documentation. And it is also the time frame for us to finish all of the work, whether it's in scope or additional work, but we are on target to have everything completed. So we are not in any way, shape, or form in danger of having to send anything back, and we are not going to be over our budget of what funds we have in hand. So I hope that answers the question.
So if I may follow up, Michelle. So will a future item then come to us about the additional scope that will eat into this remainder of 137?
It all depends if it exceeds the threshold that requires us to actually bring it to you.
Got it.
If it does not, then we won't. But if we will, you all, of course, will see it. But the way that we are actually structuring it, potentially you guys won't see it, but you will see the expenditure and the funds, spent out and the zero balance on the budget spreadsheet for the project.
Yeah, because that threshold's pretty low for it coming to the board, correct?
I believe it's 100,000. So
is that right, Jim? I thought it was lower than that.
Well, I think it depends on the kind of instrument, right? Because if it's a contract, but that's a professional services contract, but this
Right.
wouldn't be a professional services
Right.
contract. This would be under the state bid limit, right?
Right.
Which is about 100,000.
Right.
And so then what they will be doing will be similar to what they're already doing. So we won't
Correct.
run into any foul of
Correct.
the law kind of.
No, so what we've done is we've identified the
expanded.
areas based on the areas that were not covered under the contract, and we balanced what was left outstanding and what monies we have available. And basically we're spending what we have and doing what we can with the money that we have in hand. So, and we've gone to each of the sites and identified areas with the principals to say, this is an area that you can improve upon, and is this a priority for you, or is it something that can wait, downstream when there's additional funds to do other things. So we've been evaluating it for about the last 2 months, and so now we're ready to actually act on it.
Thank you. And when you said we've gone to the school sites, do you mean all 42 sites or just the ones that were?
The ones that actually were participating in the Prop 39.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next were the two items that there's a Centerville and a Hopkins. And Anne, do you have any questions on those? I just have a quick question.
If you can just give me the number. I don't.
Oh, I'm
but
sorry, 11.3 and 11.4.
Thank you.
One question, I guess, is, and I think we had a board update, but I'm not clear in my mind. We had asked for all new projects to have solar, so I wasn't sure how solar is being incorporated into these updates that we're receiving. So that's one piece of my question. And the other is, having had that chance to go to Horner last week for a tour, I was surprised at some of the things that I saw, not in a bad or good way. It was just like, oh, okay. So I'm wondering what we've learned from Horner that will either be replicated or not done again when we move out with our next conversions.
So let me take the first question, which was solar being incorporated into the conversions. So we are now having our consultant Will Dan work directly with the design teams and the project management teams to look at how solar can be incorporated into the projects. So we are almost finished with the analysis in terms of loading and leveling and quantity to say, hey, this is the perfect amount for us to, keep our rates low or zero out. So once that's done, we can then look at what the pricing would look like based on that analysis. But we've identified location, we've identified size of units, and we've coordinated with the school sites to actually identify the locations and confirm that those would be appropriate based on what activities are going on in each one of the areas. All of the parking lots have been addressed in all of the conversion projects. And we are also looking at many of the other sites that have land and opportunity to be able to incorporate the solar panels in a canopy setup. That's, the easiest and most cost effective at this time. So that's where we are. We have also worked with our legal counsel and the consultant to put together an RFP. It's in the process of being finalized right now to actually go out and solicit services for the implementation of the solar on the conversion sites. And so once I have that information, I'll be able to share that with you all as well. But we are moving. It's just one of those quiet, slow processes that we're going forward with. As far as Hopkins goes and the lessons learned, as you know, each project has its own identity, its own character, its own personality. the things that we've learned from Hopkins is that, we have to button
Horner?
down. I'm sorry,
mean Horner?
Horner. Yes, I always confuse the two. Is that we have to make sure we are very clear on scope of work prior to bidding, and to make sure we include the site in the evaluation and development of the scope of work. So one of the things that has happened at Horner is that I believe there was a change in the staffing, there was a change in the project management team, and there was also change of staff within the contractor community. So with those three things, there was a huge knowledge gap that occurred in the transition. And so with that, we missed some things and things fell through the cracks and communication was not very clear. So moving forward, we're taking extra time to make sure that we address all the needs of the site prior to finally completing the documentation. And also, we have very tight coordination with M&O facilities and the contractor and the project management team. Whereas my understanding prior to my arrival, that wasn't something that actually happened often. So we are addressing many things just through additional communication and tighter controls over how information is disseminated and created to make sure that it's as complete as possible. And there was one other question that you asked me about Horner, and I wrote it down, but I can't read my own writing.
Well, it was more of a general question about what we have learned from Horner that we want to replicate or we don't want to replicate at these two, Centerville and
I see.
and Hopkins. Now you've got me forgetting if it's Hopkins or Horner. So that was the gist of the question, and I think you answered it. I know that you're right. There were I like how you define that knowledge gaps because we had a lot of transition.
Yes.
With this particular project. So I could see already from Centerville, for example, that the way color may have been incorporated into the Centerville campus is significantly different than how it was at Horner. And so that made me realize, maybe, there was that knowledge gap when Horner was being built out. So I think there's plenty of other conversations. I would say my other aha moment when I visited Horner, and I know this is not specifically on the agenda, but it was now I have a true understanding of what valued engineering means.
Oh, good.
After hearing that term at Horner, why something was done a certain way, and it was value engineering. I was like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. And we try not to do that if we don't have to, but when we do, we have to be very strategic about how we do it. So.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So the other question for me was about COIL, which was just, that's 11.5. There's a comment, in the chart, which is very helpful about the current MOU and the proposed. There's, that shows the differences. It notes that there's no change currently with COIL wanting to be part of the El Dorado charter SELPA, but that they may, but it's only for 2021. So I wondered if this does not apply then for the out years.
I can answer that question. So COIL will be part of El Dorado for 2021. They're trying to get out of El Dorado charter SELPA for this year, but because of the late notification that they sent to El Dorado, they're hooked up until 2021. But they're planning to come back to Mission Valley SELPA next fiscal year 21-22.
So then because this contract goes out until 2024, what then is the financial ramification for us if they're coming back to us within these contract years?
Then both parties has to agree on the way that we should be charging them for the special ed services that we will be providing to them. one thing that that I made the comment to them is that in their renewal, there's already a provision for how the district is going to be charged them, and this is by proportionate share of the contribution to the special ed program, and that's what we
Yeah.
did actually in 2018-19.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we had already opened that conversation up with COIL with regard to what they would be charged if they came back. So they were very open to that. So we don't anticipate really any issues with them paying their proportional share. And they have already provided notice to El Dorado of their intent to rejoin MVROP. So it's been a good process, and we enjoy working with them.
So it would just be an amendment to the contract by mutual agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. And from what Robbie was saying, we would go back to what we had prior to them leaving for El Dorado.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay.
I don't have anything until 15.2. So
Yes. Well, that is the crux of it, isn't it? Let's jump right there.
a little thing.
Go ahead, Ann. I'll get my paperwork in order.
Well, I would love to just hear what you think is the big takeaway, the big picture, therefores.
So, well, I'll kick it off, and Rice can go into the detail if there's any detail. But I mean, the takeaway is that we, prior to the state approval of the budget, we had to submit a budget. The state budget was not approved. So we had to make some assumptions about reductions, which we did, about $35 million in reductions. So based on the final budget approval, we have now been able to reevaluate our budget. So we were able to, as the summary showed, we were able to remove the 35.1 million in reductions that we thought we were going to have to make for fiscal year 2021. And in addition, the board had asked us to consider some other changes with regard to custodial FTEs. So we were able to add in 9.25 custodians. And we also projected the cost of reentry, because there is some expenses that we are going to have to absorb based on going into our new distance learning format. So all of that was incorporated into our adjustments. And on top of that, from a revenue standpoint, we also know that that some of those items, like the 10% reduction to our LCFF base grant, was reversed. So basically, the summary of all of that shows that the reductions that we had anticipated this year that we do not need to make. We do have enough to meet our statutory reserve and the board's additional reserve for this current year. But what we've always said is that for next year, and I do caution, because I know I've seen some information about adding some things back, and I would just say exercise and caution, because our budget, our multi-year, does show that we will have to make reductions in the out years unless there is increase in revenues from the state to the district. So I just don't want us to be in a situation where we add some things back and we have to wind up cutting them again as we get to the spring, and we have to start having discussions about what we're going to reduce to meet our 21-22 budget. So
Well, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean
no,
to
go ahead.
interrupt
I'm sorry.
you. No, that's okay. In addition to that, we're looking at the deferrals. So if we have additional monies left, that means that we would have to do less in the way of borrowing to get through the deferrals. Is that correct?
You want to respond, Rice? I see you shaking your head.
Robbie's leaning forward. Yes,
Go
Robbie.
ahead, Robbie, you go first.
So having an ending fund balance doesn't mean that all of it is cash. An
Oh,
ending fund
yeah.
balance
I
might
should
be
know that.
something else, but so it does not affect. It might affect it, but
Not
not
necessarily.
not
Okay,
necessarily.
Right.
got it.
Yeah, the other piece just to add in is to expand on what Mr. Battle said is, and you know, your projections are really based on the economy coming back. They're very rosy kind of picture of what the future is going to look like. And unfortunately, although I don't claim to be an economist, I'm really worried that they're potentially overly optimistic for what we're going to actually see in future year revenues. The one last thing I just wanted to say to Marcus, we had this great debate while you were gone and you missed it. In some documents, we call it reentry. In some documents, we call it reopening. And so we came to consensus last week. We're all going to train our brains to call it reopening. So
Yeah, it should be real. Actually, I like that myself.
But it's funny, in some
I was reading off the
documents,
document here.
yeah, we call it
Rice,
different.
this sounds like Rice's language.
Yeah, reentry, like we're blasting back or something.
Yeah, right.
So I think that those are good points, Dr. Morris, and sobering coming from somebody who always has rosy glasses on. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything else, Michelle. The only other thing that question I have is that the Fremont Education Foundation did vote to not do the after-school band this year because of the current situation. So my understanding is we have matching funds for that program. Is that correct? And then moving those back into the general fund for this year. Yes, Robbie.
For the past years, yes, there is a contribution to the band program, which is $75,000 annually. I'm not sure. Probably Reyes can say more in regards to the budget for fiscal year 2021.
You said that correctly, yes. We have $75,000 contribution. And if we disband the program altogether, we will take that money back from the budget as well.
It won't be disbanded, but altogether, but it will be for this year. They've already voted not to do the program, and they're going to put their efforts in other places, including potentially some fundraising to help the district, which would be lovely. But definitely, they have voted not to do the program this year.
All right.
Robbie?
Will they notify us, ma'am, that they're not going to do that? Okay.
I will make sure that gets to you from the president. I just happened to, I'm back as an associate on the Ed Foundation, so I was in that meeting. But yes, I'll make sure that we get something in writing if it hasn't already come to you.
Crosby, just so you know, there was some communication between the president and the acting superintendent today. And so because they want to, because of this fundraising, the MOU piece. And so I did ask Mrs. Sandoval to make sure that Mr. Larson, as the liaison, got on the new superintendent's calendar his first week here, simply because they want to have an MOU on the August 12th, similar to what was done with Support Fremont Schools in 2010. So yeah. I think that official notification hopefully could even be made public through this MOU that they're proposing we enter into for funding purposes.
Right. I think that, it needs to come to the board first and they need to approve of the idea. I think the fact that we've done it before successfully and that we do sort of have a process in place that we can follow a little bit will make it hopefully very successful. But I'm cognizant that the board hasn't actually voted on it yet. So, and the new superintendent hasn't had a chance to have the conversation either. So
right, and I think the proposal is to bring it forward at the next board meeting, which would be his first board meeting. So yeah, we'll have a lot of getting him up to speed on it.
Yeah,
do.
great. We have, community members who really want to help. So it'll be nice potentially to have a vehicle to have that happen. That's all I have on this, Michelle.
I had just a couple of questions I needed clarification on, but I am curious who the new president of FEF is. Is that public?
Kathy Kimberlin is the current president.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So just to make sure that I'm absolutely clear, on page 3 of the presentation, the 2 columns that are may revise and then enacted budget, that's the enacted budget from the state, correct? That's not our enacted budget that we approved, that the board approved at the last time that we discussed this.
If we only had 70.9 billion.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Right.
The money
It is Howard. Yay.
it just something wasn't sitting me correctly, and I think that was because I think it was in the COLA that I was becoming confused.
No.
So if you could walk me through the COLA piece of it, that would be helpful.
That's your favorite topic, Rice. You want to?
Marcus, do you want me to share the presentation so everyone can see that?
I don't have it up on here.
I have that up. If you allow me, I can bring it up.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
Okay, I'm gonna share that now. All right.
It's up, Rice.
All right. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So your question is about the COLA only, right?
Well, yeah, if you could just explain, Rice, how originally in the May revision, they had proposed the COLA and then the deficit factor. And so how it actually ended up being at 7.92. If you can kind of explain
All right.
how you laid out your thinking in the chart.
Okay, so in the May revise, what state proposed or the governor proposed is a statutory COLA of 2.31%. And they also said the funded COLA is going to be 2.31%. These are two different things. Statutory COLA is a legal requirement. Funded COLA can be different. So they were exactly the same. But since governor and the state of California did not have enough money in the budget, they imposed a deficit factor of 10%. Now, people in the school business, they know about that going back in time. We used to have a deficit factor in our budgets almost always in early 2000s, 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, all those time periods. So the effectively, our COLA was negative 7.92%. Simple example, if our revenue is $100 and they fund 2.31% COLA, our revenue becomes $102.31, right? But then they impose 10% reduction on the new amount, 102. And that becomes our new amount, which is going to be about $92 and some cents. In the enacted budget, because of all the pressure they had, all the push they had, what they said is statutory COLA is still 2.31%, but the funded COLA is going to be 0%, and effectively deficit factor is 0%, and there's no reduction in our allocation. In other words, the money we are going to receive in 2020-21 is same as last year, 2019-20. Does that clarify anything, Michelle?
As is often the case, it leads, I think, to more questions, but
Yeah, please go ahead because it is complicated.
yeah. so there is, the statutory is what's mandated.
That's
And
legal requirement, yes.
yes, okay. And how do they come up then with that 2.31% for this particular coming fiscal year, or the year that we're in actually?
How they came up with 2.31%. 2.31% is a factor that is given to us from US Department of Commerce. That's a one figure that throughout the US is exactly the same thing. That figure is used to calculate the Social Security and all the increase in cost of goods and services. So this number is not unique to California. That's a national figure.
And then is the funded COLA then what we do in California, where we take the average of all of the counties and, or what we have done in the past? I mean, this year it's 0, but in the past where we've gotten, let's say, 1%, it's 1% is the average of the whole state, and they're tacking that on to the statutory, or am I thinking something different?
This is something different. Funded COLA almost 99% of the time is same as statutory COLA. Only exception was during Governor Brown's time period when they gave us super COLA at that time. Because the statutory COLA,
really based on what the state believe they can afford. And
yes,
like you said, they generally do give us the COLA, the statutory COLA. But in this particular year, because of the economy, they were unable to give us to fund the COLA, to fund the statutory COLA. So it's really just based on the state funding availability.
So that's a minimum they can give us. They can always give us much, much more than that. But historically, funded COLA is same as statutory COLA.
Okay.
You're muted.
You're muted, yeah.
I apologize. It's good sometimes when I talk to myself, because then nobody listens. On page 5 of the presentation, Rice, if you want to go ahead to that. So this is the cost of reopening as opposed to reentry. And I see that these are the, where you have the task force subcommittee. So this is what each task force was, what they had recommended to be done and the costs associated with that. Is that how is that understanding it correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, this was based on feedback from the different groups.
Okay, so I guess what was puzzling to me then, that there were a lot of zeros, because when I think of something like safety, or when I think of even human resources and see zeros, I come up with a lot of things that I think would cost us extra money. So I'm a little bit, I don't know what the, I don't have the information on why there wouldn't be any additional funding with those particular items. And I don't.
So I was hoping you were going to say you were coming up with things to save us more money.
Of course not. I would love that, but that's not our reality right now. The other thing, I was also not sure what needs means, and if we have needs, then why that would be 0.
Yeah, we can some of this is duplication. Like with the example safety, a lot of the safety information in terms of efforts are part of the are really a part of the disinfecting. There's some and similar to facilities, there are items there that there's some duplication. And in terms of human resources, this is what all came out of it. If there is additional costs, maybe it's some things that those committees did not think about, but as you know, there was a cross section of folks on all of these committees, and I mean, as a minimum, this is what we've come up with in as a district.
Marcus, can I add something? Because
Yeah.
I did sit on the needs, the facilities, and the safety. So part of why you don't see large dollar figures for the cost of reopening is because the board did make a decision to do distance learning. And so because of that, there are certain things now we don't have to do. And so based on whatever model, whether it was distance learning, hybrid, or in person, there were costs associated with each one of those. And so because you all chose to do distance learning, a lot of the expenditures that we would have had to make for the hybrid or the in-person, we are now not making that because we don't physically have students that are going to be occupying the space. Now, when you guys change your mind and we move to a different model based on where we are within the pandemic, then you're going to see a different set of numbers that we're going to bring to you to say, this is the cost that we anticipate incurring for the model of education that we're now going to be rolling out.
So I'm not sure I understand that, nor that I necessarily agree with it, depending on, even with distance learning, if we have teachers who want to work from our school sites, we may still have some costs.
Absolutely, but those costs
We don't
can
know
be
what they are,
borne.
though.
Yeah, those
Yeah, we
costs can be borne with what we already have.
We have been preparing as though school would be opening. Everything that we've done up until now has been based on school reopening. So there may be some costs, as Kelly said. I can't think of what those costs would be right now, because in terms of signage, in terms of PPE equipment, I mean, we are expect to be fully ready for that. And there's miscellaneous things, and there are things that we probably don't know about right now, to be honest with you.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
And so I think, and maybe Rice tomorrow when you're, or Marcus when we're doing the presentation, I think the lesson learned is we really have to set the context of what this is, right? To say, this is just some very preliminary rough numbers of what we know right now. We know that these costs will be much higher as we continue to work on our reopening plan. Do you think, I mean, it's been posted, Michelle and Ann, do you think it would be almost better to not present the slide because it is so kind of rough and you're right, it may cause people to say, well, wait a minute, you know, they're not really thinking about, you know, the cost of the PPE that I'll need or things like that. Do you think what would your advice be on setting the context for it tomorrow?
Yeah, I don't know how Michelle feels about it, but it probably does make sense just to pull the page and make sure that the trustees are aware that because the numbers were so rough and because there are so many unknowns, that it probably doesn't bear going into until we have more legit numbers. I don't know. What do you think, Michelle?
The converse of that is that if it's pulled, but people have already seen this because it's posted, they will think that we're trying to hide something. So.
Can I add something, Dr. Morris?
Please.
This is just information item. 45-day is just information. There's no action required here. So we can show this slide with this statement that this is work in process. This is not the final document. We are, as we speak, and things are changing. The timeline is changing, the needs are changing, the budgets are changing. Everything is actually changing right now. So this is work in process, and staff is working on these things.
Yeah.
I think that Dr. Morris, I don't know, you know, we have our question and answer, and maybe it's worth addressing it also in that if we leave the page, because I hear you, Michelle. My concern is that the trustees will get in the weeds of discussing a page that is irrelevant. But maybe if we do you know, make that point in.
Right, and say it's very preliminary. I mean, for example, the protocols for positive students and staff, right? So we're required to have an isolation room if you have a child who comes to school and becomes sick at school. Well, there's a 0 there right now. We know as we get into actually figuring out where the isolation room will be at each site, there probably is going to be some cost associated with that. So I think as long as we set the context and say, this is just a preliminary look, we know there are going to be costs there, and we'll continue to provide updated information. Maybe we can get folks not to do as you said and worry too much about it.
Yeah, I don't think it warrants imagining when we just don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
I think everybody's imagining the worst anyway. So, I would, because one of the questions that of course comes to mind that is not directly related to this presentation, but people are going to ask, professional development supplies and devices all under instruction, and what is that going to look like? Because I think people are starting to be a little bit anxious about what professional development is being offered to people, and what supplies and devices are being provided to both students and staff, because I think there's this sense right now that people are making requests and having them denied for more hotspots or repairing a computer, laptop, etc. So I think that this will allow people to have their, hopefully those questions will be answered at some point, because I think that big figure, that 1.1 figure, will need a lot more detail, and a lot more detail sooner rather than later, because of school opening in a very short while.
And I do believe that Zach will be able to put that. He was, I think, in charge of that particular committee. So I think he'll be able to put that number in context.
Okay. So somebody,
sorry, I was just going to say, I think this page begs more questions than answers.
Yes.
Why is athletics and then thermometers and
right.
It's been another whole conversation just on that alone.
Yeah.
And then, thank you. And so maybe it would, either we explain why it's not going to be discussed during it, or if you're going to remove the page, then to say very publicly that page was removed for this reason. As well as,
I think our plan right now is just to put it in context, as Jim was saying. I mean, I think that, just to kind of allay, fears, expectations, I think just putting it in context, and then folks can go from there.
And then my next question is on page 6, specific to the facility rentals. I wanted to understand, we knew that we were going to save money, or we were going to lose money by not having the facilities rented out. And that we would save money because we didn't have to expend resources for cleaning and toilet paper, et cetera, et cetera. So again, if you could just walk me through these numbers a little bit. The facility rental price increase, I get that, what we could have generated, but we didn't. So that's why it's 452. But then 217 isn't exactly a split. So so I'm trying to wrap my head around that as well.
So the district split, we're projecting that we are going to, and that's actually, we presented that when we did the budget adoption. This information is same as the projection at that time. So whatever we receive in facility rentals, we are still assuming that we are going to make a split between the district office and school sites. And the split is going to be 60-40% split.
I can add that in the past, the split was 50-50. Making a split to 60-40, it would generate $217,000 more to the general fund. But of course, with COVID-19, that is going to go down because we haven't rented out our facilities.
Okay. Thank you.
So Robbie, just to restate what I think you said, it would be your opinion that the 217 is probably an optimistic number.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is only the 45-day adjustment. So, I mean, I guess we can, you know.
Yeah, I'm confused by this altogether because how is it a savings if we haven't been able to
Well,
fund facility?
remember, we have to go back to the spring, you know, when we presented the budget reduction options to the board. And for facility rental, if you recall, the prior to us bringing this to the board, the split was different. So we changed the split to bring more funds into the general fund. So that's what's reflected here. This is not the detail because the detail was presented back in March when the board approved it.
I get that, but then we didn't rent the facilities.
So if
Right,
we're
so with the facility rentals, and this is for next year, this is for the upcoming year. So for facility rentals, you see, we did adjust that expectation because with everything being equal, we would have, based on our projections, generated about 903,000. With everything being equal, no pandemic, just regular our renting of facilities. But because of the pandemic, we've taken that into account and we've adjusted it at in terms of the estimated savings. Because we do anticipate once we are not in a distance learning that we will resume our rental of facilities. So that's what's reflected there.
Okay, and is this then projection for the entire year? So
Yes.
so if we miss 1 month, it would be one, you know, whatever proportional amount less
Right, and we
per month.
right, and we would update all of this information at first interim. We
Yeah,
would
got it. Okay,
get,
thank you.
you know, everything.
Okay. Thank you. It looks like we're out of time. How did that happen? Is there anything we must ask Ann before we, I think I was going to ask about the interfund transfers, but I will wait for Wednesday to do that. Anything else that you had, Ann?
Yeah, I had other questions as well. I'm trying to think. I guess my questions will wait, or I'll send them with my regular board questions.
I would get a lot of questions from board members regarding SODEXO. So
Yeah.
I'd just like to offer some comment on that. I do, prior to the pandemic, we were on pace to maybe break even with with the deficit that we had projected in our program. And that was in large part because of the great work that SODEXO has been doing with the district. And we were really encouraged by that. So this is, you know, the pandemic has been a setback because we really, they really did a good focus this year on costs and working with the district. I think if we were to remove SODEXO, I really think it would be detrimental to the program. We would likely have to hire a director, and we would also have to have additional staff to do the work that SODEXO does to support the program. So from that standpoint, it would almost be a wash in terms of the cost savings. We do benefit from the great buying power that SODEXO has. They are able to buy large quantities for much higher discount than we would get as a district. And you all have seen, you know, the assistance they've provided us throughout the pandemic and in in continuing our service in assisting us in continuing our service to students. And so I just think that I know that we are looking for savings. I just think that in that particular case with SODEXO, I just think that that's something that is, to me, from my position, has been a benefit to the district, and they bring a lot of expertise, and they've really helped us. I don't even know what I would do without them if they were not here, to be honest with you.
Well, that's good input to have. I don't know if you had any questions on that, Michelle, but the other thing I did want to say is maybe not everyone knows that Dr. Zamora was injured while trimming trees. He's fine, but this is why Dr. Morris is here helping us while he recovers from his injury. So we are very grateful, Dr. Morris, excuse me, that you were able to be with us again. So thank you. Okay, I guess we're out, yeah?
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you. And you said you were going to send follow-up questions. Just so you know, I told Patty I would leave tomorrow about 6, so I'll probably be there around 11. So we'll get answers to you as soon as we can.
I'm not worried.
Are you
Okay.
physically coming here?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to do a board meeting virtually. Sorry, I'm old.
It's very interesting, I'll just say. But we'll be glad to have you there filling Dr. Zamora's shoes.
I just talked to him a little while ago, and he's poor man. Poor man.
But okay.
Okay.
See you all on Wednesday.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Kelly.
Bye, everybody.
Robbie,
Bye,
thank
everybody.
you.